The conversation will be taped, and then it can be seen later. Well, I'm very excited at being here, at being able to be here. My name is Tatiana Rocha. For those of you who do not know me, I'm a visual artist, Colombian. I've been living in New York since the year 2000. Today I'm in my study in Brooklyn. And, well, this conversation that is called Decocainizing Coca, defying narratives, Occidental narratives of a sacred plant, I have to thank Residency Unlimited. Pardon me, I'm a bit nervous. I want to make sure I don't forget anything. I would like to thank Residency Unlimited to conduct this. This conversation is occurring within the IPISA, which is an Rachel Raphael is a curator for this exhibit, and it includes Jody Lynch Chichao, Enya Tatawinski, Jevi Jovisu, and Maureen Catman. All of us were selected to be part of this residency artist in New York in 2023, and we are artists who are identified as people who are Black, Indigenous, and color. Our practices are focused on research that fills the gap in knowledge. For those of us who do not know, Residency Unlimited, it is a nonprofit organization that supports the creation, presentation, and dissemination of contemporary art through residencies for artists, curators, local and international, in the city of New York. We are including the links for the organizations. Since I have my limited time, I will introduce the moderators and presenters, and will speak about the framework and talk a bit of why this conversation, such an important conversation, is taking place. I would like to thank Marcela, who is here, the moderator. She's an anthropologist, Colombian. She is a Colombian anthropologist. She supervises the pedagogical work and a project in Colombia. Her work is centered in the urban studies and ethnographics, focused on processes of entrepreneurial work through adoption and resignification of space in practices and cultural experiences. Her experience is in conducting projects of ethnographic research together with indigenous and Afro-descendant communities and urban, as well as populations LGBTQIA, and in rural contexts. She has been part of collectives and interdisciplinary groups with collaborative research, trying to find dialogue spaces of collective learning and working with alternative communication works, participation, and education. Marcela has been an important person in this process of research since I started this residency. And we have both been speaking and working. Marcela has spoken about a lot of text and introduced me to Dora and Fabiola, and both of them have been referred by different people, but we thought a lot about who we were going to bring together for this conversation. Well, Fabiola Piñachicue, she's an indigenous person from Cauca. She's former mayor, and in Pais, Cauca, she's the manager, founder of Iniciativa Comercial Coca for resignification, promotion, and respect of the coca leaf. She was the leader of a legal battle against Coca-Cola to defend local products derived from the coca leaf and the Coca Sec soda pop. Fabiola went to the Javeriana University, has a master's in geography in the Pedagogical University. I will tell you a little of the history of how I came to know Cocanasa. Dora Troyano is ecologist from Popayan, Colombia, and she's a specialist in conservation. As 2000, she's been participating in promotion and traditional uses and alternative of coca leaf through participation in the International Forum of Coca Leaf and works with the National Learning Service. And she obtained a permit to acquire coca leaf as a raw material for projects. Research have been able to standardize food and fertilizers. All of the knowledge and results of the research of Troyano have been taken to Peru and Bolivia from 2019 and 2022, and she led Reto Coca with the Alliance of Coca for Peace, where she brought together a group of chefs to know the process of making food products from the coca leaf. Currently, she's a candidate for a PhD in biology and her studies, biocultural studies, in Cauca Popayan University. Well, I am Tatiana Rocha. My practice studies the intimacy between people and the land. It's set in my personal memory and rooted in my experience as an immigrant, and my community focuses through public art interventions and transdisciplinary knowledge sharing. The vast majority of my works revitalize and rebuilds Colombia's vulnerable tropical forests, confronting the ecological, emotional, and cultural loss caused by extractive economies, colonial practices, and the war on drugs. I'm this is what I needed to include with this time. And I tried to write how I could introduce this conversation, what I was going to say. I am a person who tells stories, so I started many times and I deviated and came back. And I thought that maybe the best way was for this to be natural, for it to flow naturally. There's a piece my story, the story along regarding my work and relationship with Colombia starts from the moment I arrived in New York, and the impact of always been asked, where can we buy cocaine when I go to Colombia? And this constant relationship of the stereotype of Colombia as a dangerous country, violent, and with cocaine. I was very impacted with, when people, when they asked those, they had no idea of what other things Colombia could offer. And Colombia is culturally, racially diverse and biodiverse plants. It's a country that has a lot to give. It's a very important country within the different problems of climate change and war against drugs. Fumigations against cocaine have really created a great impact. So I started talking about these things that I wish to say, talk about the forest, biodiversity. And 2017, I created an installation from from where this conversation took off. It's called Imminent Beauty. So we will be including the link, because if I try to open the images, I will not be able to concentrate and I need to be brief. So part of this installation was that I was going to start inviting people to have conversations around the problems, environmental problems. And one of the things that was offered was Coca Nasa, which I found in the airport before I left in 2016. It was the first time that I, as a Colombian, had access or knew of something related to Coca that had a different narrative. And since I bought the product, I brought them overjoyed. And so when I delved into the conversation, more conversation, I learned of the initiative of Fabiola, and I started finding that it's illegal. And I started trying to find out these disconnects between the plant and the drug itself. When I sat, when I, within this and invited people, I started noticing that people come asking me as if I were an expert. And that's when I realized I really don't have sufficient knowledge on the issue, but I have, but I'm very interested in learning. And part of what has happened in my practice, and is so important for me, is that my practice has taken me to connect more with my country and to learn of this diversity of knowledges and start learning about this plant, which I think is a very powerful plant. Conversation today is the result of some readings I started on Mama Coca, the book of Anthony. Oh, I'm forgetting. Pardon me, Anthony Herman, and I'm dyslexic. So part of my difficulties is that I cannot retain information. And one of the things I started doing was looking for visual references that would help me connect the things I was reading. And when I started was seeing these visual issues, I saw what was happening in the northern countries to make invisible all the knowledges and everything about the plant, the knowledges of the indigenous people and peasants and the Afro population. And part of that form of learning, then I spoke with people who know a lot about this topic, and I'm inviting these people for them to be the ones who speak about it because I'm in the process, like so many other people who are listening to this conversation, to learn. It's a process that is very exciting, and it's really exciting to have Fabiola Piñacue, Dora Troyano, and Marcela Vallejo in this conversation. Many of the questions that we will be making are some that I ask myself as an artist, because when I review these images and these campaigns to promote cocaine and the sale of cocaine in the States, I realize the impact of visual image of everything that's being done. And I ask, how can I be part of this conversation without taking retaking problems that have existed throughout history? So I needed to review how this visual history, how these stories have occurred, so that I, with my work, can reconsider and see how I can talk about this topic. I've explored many different forms with the leaf and the poor access I had to the leaf because it's illegal here in the States. So I will stop here and give the floor to Marcela. Thank you, Tatiana. And thank you for your invitation, for the space. I think that with Tatiana, we've been thinking of this panel for a few months already. We had talked for a while, but rigorously for a few months, and we came up with the questions, both of us, starting from the interests that each of us had and things that we thought were relevant, and considering what she just mentioned is very important, and is the legal status of this plant in different countries, and how that legal status has concrete, specific impact on the life of people and the life of the plant itself. Today, while I was reviewing Mama Coca, with we've been we were part of the origin of the book. I found a sentence of Anthony that says, "It's time to make peace with Coca." I think for some people, it's not necessary because they've always been at peace with Coca, but for other people, it is important. And also, part of this conversation has to do with that. So let's start now with our panel. It will occur as follows. I will propose some questions to Dora and Fabiola, and each will have around 5 minutes to answer. I can see that if the time is, if you're going off limit, exceeding the limit, then I will uh, tell you. Question people who would like to make a question, please on the part where it says questions and answers, you can make them throughout the conversation, but they will be answered at the end. But if you start thinking about them, it's fine for you to write them. Okay. I would really like to thank Dora and Fabiola very much for accepting this invitation. It's an honor for us to have you. We know your experience. We know who you are and what you have done, and we're sharing what you do today. For us, it's very important. So I would like to start so that you can tell the audience and us first, where are you? Please tell us a bit. And what is your story with the coca leaf? Because we know that both of you have different background. How did the relationship with the plant start? For I don't know if which of you would like to start. I will give the floor to Dora, and I wanted to give it to Fabiola. Wonderful to be with you, Fabiola, after so much time. We hadn't conversed after the pandemic. I really want to thank very much this invitation. I love the idea of telling people what we're doing and to contribute from the work that we're doing. It could be little persistent for there to be sympathy towards coca and endearment. Something really lovely that I learned from our colleagues, Mares in Bolivia, when they're going to start a conversation with Coca, they ask the spirit of Coca for good thoughts, good words, and good feelings to give that to the other. So I really love being here with you with good feelings and a lot of endearment. I'm from Popayan. I live there. I was born there, and I'm here, and that's where my library is. One is from where his or her books are. So I'm from Popayan. And my approach towards coca was very young because I'm very lucky to have been raised in a peasant family. My grandparents had a little farm in a place in this area called Piendamo. And my grandfather came from an area called Silvia. And he always had his little plant of coca. And that's what he used to take away the pain of the stomach ache or the toothache. And I was in that farm, and we still have those same six coca plants that existed. Each tree is 45 years old that my grandfather had planted. They're really lovely. Thing, the only thing we ask is for them to be harvested because Electrosinum granatense and Electrosinum coca are two species that they're already domesticated and they need in order to be pretty they need to have contact with the people. They need to be near the home for you to pamper them, to speak with them, tell them that they're pretty, to fertilize them with the remains of lunch. And since I have that background from the countryside, in my childhood, I was always with that. My grandfather was very special, and he had a very special relationship with the messages brought by the plants. My grandfather was not indigenous. My grandparents My parents are mestizo, like most of the Colombian population, maybe 90% of the Colombian population. We have some very high mestizo or mixed mm, roots. So there's a domestication of the plant. I've had the opportunity to be the university in Popayan. I studied ecology, and I had the fortune of being of Dr. Alvaro Fernandez Perez, a person who knows a lot about botanics, and he was a student of Richie Rancho. And Professor Fernandez always said that we need to eat botanically, that everything you needed to do everything botanically. And that has always been in my head. If you know the botanical history of the plant, I like it, and botanics and ethnobotanics. So when Professor Fernandez and when Richard and Choi said it was called economic botanics, you can start understanding what the different languages are for one for them economical botanics, and in Latin America we call it ethnobotanics, because the uses of the plants are part of the community's lives without this meaning that it will be a development of economy within the income economy. With that basis, I was able to travel one time to the south. I took my backpack and went to Argentina on bus. Not very much money, but a lot of will, and was able to meet very important people. This is Silvia Rivera, a Bolivian sociologist, a woman who really exudes learning and teaching. She has a wonderful way of teaching, and she with her, we started looking at the borders of Coca. And so I helped her and went with whatever I want. I was always going where she was, depending on my work. And it was wonderful to bring together this this learning of Silvia and all the stories that she had of her life. And I also had the opportunity of knowing Fabiola Cadavid and her children on this pathway, in this journey. When I was with Maria Mercedes Moreno, she connected me with Fabiola David, a group of people who were looking anti-prohibitionist, who were very interesting. Anthony Herman, so many people that I've had the fortune of being surrounded with, wonderful people, people with a lot of ease to teach. So I said, well, we need to learn these beautiful things. So when the moment came to do a professional exercise, I tried to teach not from the authority of the professor, but joint learning with a community, with firms, friends in Lerma and the Colombian uh, macizo. And this is how I arrived here. I'm very happy to be here and sharing with you these experiences. Thank you. Thank you, Dora. Fabiola. Well, a special hug to all of these women that ultimately it's the era of women that start breaking these schemes, who are opening doors and opening pathways. And that's in that sense, I'm I admire Dora and all this artistic team who's starting to talk of Coca. And well, I am of the NASA people. You may know, or may not know. The NASA people is a group of people that resists and has all their policies, the majority of the policies have been at the service of all the indigenous groups in Colombia. It's a worrying people, strong. They have battled for the preservation and recovery and resistance in their natural world with all the problems that exist, but we resist. I come from those roots of the Nasa people. And well, I right now am here in this big house, which is planet Earth. Each of the beings have come with some mission, but I am in the sub home of Bogota, which is one of the places where I go and come from, Cauca. So my relationship with the coca leaf, I never got to it. I was born with it. So I will tell you of my own experience of the cultural roots. I will not talk of an experience. I want to talk of from my heart. And I talk from where what I have lived and felt with Coca. When I moved to Bogota very young, I could see that there was a persecution of the coca leaf where one feels absolutely alone and does not find roads to defend oneself. It's a moment of solitude and, and feeling helpless, and they are attacking our cultural spirit, all that spiritual and cultural base when they attack the coca. Because I come from the people who inherit the coca leaf. I, I I didn't see it. I I was born around, and my surrounding, my family has always been with the coca leaf. So that persecution at the university and young, I could see that we needed to do something. And very at ease, very peacefully, I started delving into the roads of respect and diversification of the coca leaf, to put the coca leaf where it belongs, to recover its position, because in Latin America we are the coca leaf. All the ancestral peoples are inheritors of the coca leaf. I couldn't understand why there was such a big persecution from the different media, from the institutions at the national level, internationally, to understand that it's being persecuted in one of the main symbols of the culture. So that's a very big humiliation. And we have started to deliver coca tea. We have walked many places, and nationally, we've said that it's food, it's medicine, and demanding respect. In any case, we have been able, I think, to to put the need of the discussion on the national agenda. Today, it's called drug policy. For me, drug is something different. So there are some languages that are different that confuse the citizen, and we have tried to have incidents that it's not that a bulk or a ton of chlorohydrate of coca, but it was chlorohydrate, or the paste, or the base paste was the one that was caught, but not the coca. Because it's very hard, because wherever we go, oh, it's Pablo Escobar. There is a stigmatization that's very strong, and that hurts. in the depths of our soul, because that's not what it is. So what we have done is to speak clearly and talk about the truth of the coca leaf, and we have occupied ourselves all these uh, years of our lives or towards that campaign, which we haven't ended. But however, there have been many researchers like Anthony Heyman regarding respect. He has come with literature on the coca leaf, and I think that that's a Bible. When the first time I read the book, I felt very well served. I felt pampered and by some lovely words, some experiences of the expression of coca and mambo. For me, it was very gratifying to listen to Anthony Herman in his book and other writers in Cali. I don't know if they still exist, but in this journey, the coca is we need, since it helps to open the word in that path. We have find like what we were saying. I met with Dora and Sylvia, and a lot of people we have found along the way. And it's been very important because it has meant to unite different chains of voices to not stigmatize. But I thank the world because I thank life because at this moment, I'm honored because today there are more other voices regarding the coca leaf. So I feel satisfied because it has been work that without ever having shot a bullet, it has been with the words, with actions, with Coca NASA founding it, and everything that we have found along the way of this work. We founded Coca NASA so that we can see the food, the nourishing, because that's what it is. It's a nourishing for the spirit, for the body. And the only thing that we want is to have people understand that and for people to understand that. I think we have succeeded that in throughout our lives. Thank you both very much. Both were mentioning very important things. I will go back to something Fabiola said. This is a space of women and we're sustaining women. And I think that's very important. Thank you for highlighting that because we have been in so many panels with men. Okay, that's the first. But also that this relationship with the plant that both mentioned from different places, but both find the love for it. And in the encounter with a being, there's a mutual benefit, there's a mutual encounter. And with that relationship, that's so important, so lovely. We would like now, you mentioned with this journey you both mentioned maybe we can talk about the initiatives of activism culturally, etc., that you have developed. You have mentioned a few, but a little more. How could we say the different roads that you have traveled and have taken you to the development of different products, and precisely what Fabiola was saying, this persecution of the plant. There are many things that we do not know. So we would like to know, we would like to ask you to refer to this a bit. Maybe we can start with Fabiola this time. How is the question exactly? Maybe you can delve into what you were mentioning, the initiatives of political and cultural activism, especially in your case, the work with Cocanasa. We're really interested in knowing your experience with tea, with Coca Cola. No, I'm sorry, with sodas and all the different products that have been developed. Pardon me, I will interfere because I think this is really important, because that I forgot to mention, and it's this legal battle of Fabiola that you had with Coca Cola, which I think is very important for people to understand. And that's when I refer there's an appropriation of the plant from a very different position, something that's very aggressive. So if you can talk about this a bit, maybe you can answer first, and then at the end you can talk about this. Yes, because that lapsus is important. Coca Sec, but also the battle of Coca Cola. Is this 5 minutes as well? Yes, maybe a little more. Okay, well, this is long. The story that has that we've succeeded and not been successful. We have won and lost. We've had very important uh, wins as NASA people. What we have searched is to have legal autonomy, political autonomy, administrative autonomy, because when our people, when we talk about autonomy, well, it's the discourse, the words are very nice, but when we go to the real exercises where we really understand what they refer to when we talk about autonomy. So if I am autonomous, if my people are autonomous, how do we express ourselves as what we are? Because the indigenous person cannot be valued on its own, because the indigenous person has this suit. He's much bigger than NASA people has. It's science, it's wisdom, culture, and right now, this part of history, we have a constitution which is wide and diverse, and it proposes the respect of diversity, and which suggests the preservation and promotion of culture. So I thought it was that appropriate to start to exercise economy, because if we, so, regarding economy, can participate, then that really guarantees the continuation of people's. But if you are annulled, then you cannot exist. We we would just be some pieces to be shown because we have this dress, this suit. So I think we're making the most of this moment to say, here we're here with science, with innovation, and here's Coca. Since Coca has always been currency for the NASA people, we thought, well, the indigenous who does not carry with the culture is not an indigenous person. So when we start carrying the Coca, because to bring Coca freely, we need to pay for the transport. But it was to finance all of this project. So when we started to be seen in the market, the director of INVIMA, which is the agency that gives the licenses, when we presented the aromatic herb boxes, was fine. But when we came up with Coca Sec, this soda, around the year 2000, the person from INVIMA said, no, because you should continue only doing the little teas, the little herbal teas, and the little cookies, but all this specialized thing it's coming from somebody who knows business. For me, that was a kick. That was it was a punch. What do you mean? We had only traded. We want to improve, and the tissues have to be improved, and the coca Not only has to be sold in a bag, we have to organize it, but also to organize it so that it's taken or drunk immediately. So we have been creative all our lives, and saw with surprise that we started being persecuted and being told that we were not part of this territory, which was Colombia, which was Bogota, that we needed to go to the communities and stay there. Well, that's discrimination, definitely, because we cannot reduce ourselves or be reduced to that. So, in some way, n- not shy, not timidly, we've been selling our products in the markets in fora, convening journalists and fairs and stores. And we have sought the different niches, market niches, in order to make these known, make ourselves known. And this has difficult because today we're still not being allowed to participate in the markets. We have been there. We have understood that we have very big enemies, very strong. Well, the big pharma, big multinationals that have taken over the coca leaf and are not interested in having the owners of the coca leaf to innovate, have them innovate. So we have had to um, it, it, throw away or bring down the slogan that was called "the plant that kills," and coca and marijuana kill. We brought this down that because that was it was horrible. It was an error, and we Colombians do not deserve that. And then it's a deceit. And Coca Cola then says that we have no right to use the word Coca. And then there was a claim again saying, telling us that we had 10 days to withdraw the name of Coca because they had the right to be, because for 100 years they've been using Coca in their drinks. And what we have said is, you are the ones who have 10 days to tell us who authorized you to use the name of Coca and the Coca. Because today is not like before, where they would come to Colombia and they just took things and went back with them. Today, I feel as if somebody would come to my house and start taking my books or start taking my things. This is my house. You can't take my things. Respect. A visitor cannot come and take my things. So it seems that they understood and the breadth of the problem and the problem that they're in for usurping, for taking over, coming to the communities and just extract. They take things and they give us back some little present, they give us a little something, and then they leave. And they go back with the knowledge, and then they condemn us to say that we have no right. So we told them they had 10 days to answer. And right now, they have not answered. And for us, we consider that they have been licked and we can continue in this task. And they came for gold. And I think it's about time to say, here, coca is leaf is not alone, and it has its owners, and the owners are the ancestral people. So that has been our battles. We have won some other cases in the courts. Right now, in the Inter American Court, we have another claim because we're still being persecuted. It's been very difficult, this exercise, because we feel violated in our rights. They don't allow us to develop our knowledges. They don't allow us to get inserted in the market. And we are in that pursuit to have that participation. And authorities should accompany us so that we can include that wisdom before it gets ended. So that is our task. It has not been easy at all. It has meant facing off with big and small interests. Yes, with all the war against drugs, and in the moment where the coca leaf is considered that, then the persecution starts, and then goes into different other universes, and it's colonial because Coca-Cola attitude is colonial. Dora, you tell us. What can I say? No, nothing. That Fabiola's work and of David and the people in Calderas was really inspiring for many of the things that I started doing. Because definitely we must recognize that in many scenarios, we call them for those, this that they have had has been very, very strong. You have been very strong. We have some differences in some things, but I think that really there has been a lot of learning. And from there, an issue that I started developing from my visits to the south to learn of what is going on was that's taking place in north of Argentina, Bolivia, Peru, to be able to know what they're doing really made me question many things. If in Peru and Bolivia they can have industry around coca, there are 150 products. We have shampoo, soap, so many things. Why is it that in Colombia we cannot do this? Why can we not do this? So that makes us have these questions and go to different institutions and try to find answers. And I started working with my colleagues with SENA, this learning institute, a learning service. And how can we make this reality change? I believe that Coca is an opportunity for the Andean peoples. I think it's a very important opportunity for the world, for this area in Colombia, because Coca does not differentiate, to be an entity that goes above. It's an Andean entity. Coca is no longer a plant. For a long time, this has been in our veins as Andean populations. It communicates in different dimensions. For, for let's say, I am not of the mystic line. I believe in what is human and non-human, and knowing a little of the writings of Escola. We need to generate some spaces, some legal spaces in Colombia, where that have to develop coca products. I didn't have many ideas. We had the support of an external financier, the society foundations. They knew the experiences that we were doing with the people in Lerma, Cauca. And maybe we can bet on this. We can work at different levels. This pedagogical proposal, which is the first thing we wanted to do, it was the start of the work, which is giving it a different worth. So the purpose is to affect public policy that at this moment are exclusively interdiction as opposed to production. So I bring to the floor the important figures, and it's speculation on how many hectares are there that are planted in Colombia. So, depending on who you ask, there could be 150 or 200 and something hectares. I So my reflection in my invitation: how many families do we have associated regarding with drug trafficking? So industrialization of coca is anecdotal. Very few people are around the coca looking for this legal framework. The proposal is to think around 130,000 families are connected directly to this process. We do not need to give them an opportunity. The answer is more, of course, we need to give them an opportunity. This opportunity has to be doing this exercise with facts, true facts, and true figures, no speculations. So one of the things we need is that has to do with the alliance of Coca for Peace is to bring together many different levels of the process. We're working strongly on research, on quantitative. We're look look we're sending all these products of coca around the country and go to send them to this university UIS, and with some a very important chemist, Elena Elitechenko, and she brings out the information. It says the content is uh, this is cocaine or stilegoina. These are the metabolics that have to do, and she tells us what she finds in each product. I think it's important to have two arguments. One is how can we prove that there's no recoverability? How can we be prohibited from taking the coca drink with the recuperation of alkaloids when there are there's no trace of cocaine? But we need to and others, we need to make the argument with numbers. On the other hand, there's support to the product ones who produce from different areas of Colombia, from Sierra Nevada, Santa Marta, which is in the north, to the Amazonas, which is in the south. And Coca Nasa is one of our colleagues. And we ask them, what do you need? Our resources aren't enormous, but so if you need to support with a uniform for the football team of uh, of the reserve, then, well, we're very happy to be able to, because we think those are all valid. This is the effort that we do with the Alliance for Coca for Peace. And we have the other side, which is this Coca challenge. And we invite the best chefs in the country, and we take them so that they seek this experience. We take them to Lerma in Cauca, and we explain to them how the production is, the one that we're trying to design. It's a production in small crops. And here's an important factor we need to bring: we work with people who are owners of their land. So these 110 or 120,000 people that are part of this drug trafficking, it's only 15% are the ones who are owners of their land. So if we go back, and I will go back to the Coca challenge, but I think this is important. We cannot talk of a campaign that is successful to modify coca production where people is not the owner of their land. We need a country of owners to be able to, for the owner of the land to be able to have sufficient legal support, social fabric, to be able to do the exercise that people that our colleagues in the north of Cauca can do, which is to resist to the armed actors. We let's not talk of the romantic aspect of the coca leaf. We're talking about areas where armed people come and threaten the population who lives there. So it's easier to be resistant for when it's a person who's owner of the land and versus one who's just on loan. So all of these are variables we have to bear in mind when we think of the country in general as coca production. So what we do with Coca Challenge, we bring the chefs, they come up with wonderful recipes. We put them on the Sena page, who's our natural allied with the gastronomical group and the people from the university, and we come out with what you know is cocachallenge.org. And we want coca to be for everybody who needs it, but also we need to give an opportunity as agricultural producers for this to be a product that can be developed from mestizo communities that also indigenous and Afro descendant as owners of the residents of this area. Precisely what Fabiola was saying a while ago about creativity and nurturing that creativity has not only allowed the development of these products, but also existence of the humans on the earth, but also prohibition policies, anti-drug policies that are against the plants, as you said, the traceability or recovery of the alkaloids is very small, but in many products, it's still being persecuted. It has concrete effects. And there, we wanted to approach this issue of prohibition, but also of imagination and regulation. We know it's not a mystery. We know the war against drug has been a failure. And here we're talking in Colombia, but there's something, but also in the United States. And for us, it's important to start having these discussions. We know that since 2001, we started talking about the Coca law. In 2021, some senators have started proposing the discussions on regulation of the leaf and the derivatives, Ivan Marulanda and another, and that debate did not continue 2 years ago. But these debates in the States, in the United States, are not at that level. Although right now we have a president that is requesting that debate to occur. So imagining that there's a regulation of that time, how would you imagine the future of coca to be? How do you think it would affect regulation or this traditional relationship with the plant? Let's play at imagining. Who would like to start? Well, since Dorita just ended, then I guess it's my turn. Um, well, in truth, I don't agree with the law, with the laws. Laws have allowed stealing the resources. I think that we have special protection for the communities and for the peasants because here we are we are solidary to share a knowledge, and cultures have to do with sharing. And what we're battling here very clearly is be who will then keep the business of the cocaine. There's no discussion. So here are researchers, organizations, because here the lid came off this pot, and we took this lid off because we said the coca leaf has to be seen holistically. You cannot see it on by its specific parts. To give it some names, where we said that for years and years that coca is good for to be against pain, and in the Caribbean they were for cocaine. We have always had our remedies. How have we been able to subsist without doctors? We have midwives and the plants, and now because Harvard said that it has papaina, that has papain, others, and they give them names and change the names, and just to get the Indian a little disconcerted. But that's with regulation, with the law. They took our lands from us, and they cornered us, so that if I'm when they talk to me about the law, it scares me because that happened with marijuana. We cannot hide that. I participated in the implementation of the formulation of the degree, and we did it for the indigenous communities of northern Cauca. So I ask, when the law was approved, who did it benefit? Today in North Cauca, the war groups didn't increase, and some was one peasant, one indigenous person benefited. Did one benefit from that? So what's the law for? So uh, let's not deceive each other. There's a natural law in this case for coca. It already exists. What we need to do is to promote that the indigenous movement, that indigenous communities start leading where this has to be clarified. Because if we need today, if the world demands cocaine for their medicines, for their pains for the world, well, tell us how much cocaine you need, because coca as such belongs to the peoples, and everything that can be done from there is owned by the people, of the indigenous peoples. And they can make soaps. For a long time ago we told them that coca leaf, with the coca leaf, it's an it's an additional ingredient for cooking. So, so does that have to be said by Mrs. What's the name of this chef? That they go to the communities to see how they cook. For example, the black, and they say, "Oh, look, that fish, I prepared it." What's her name? Leonor Espinosa. She's a famous chef, and she went to the Afro communities, and they saw how they prepared the fish, and also with coca, some experiments. And then she says, I'm defending. No, pardon me. Black people have the capacities. And that's what we say too. Here we know of coca. Why are they coming to legislate or regulate it? Allow indigenous people to have the capacity to, in an organized way, to know where this should go in the regulation of coca. Because if it's an indigenous person who proposes it, the door closes. But if it's a white person, they say, oh, how pretty it looks. And that worries us because that's an identity issue, cultural identity and political identity and everything. So since the white people eat coca, oh, how pretty. So let's all of us eat coca. So I think that as if coca comes from the communities, well, surely it could be welcomed, because there is no uh, ambition to build with cocaine and make cocaine, um, to give it a bad management with the greed. Law today will not solve that. And the indigenous communities, we have suggested the indigenous movement where they should start exercising in the defense of that collective right, because coca is a heritage of the peoples. And if Bolivia they're doing it, and in Peru they're doing it through the alaco, well, here in Colombia, these are different processes. Here, the communities, the members of the communities who we started to say, wait a minute, coca leaf should be respected because it's food, and that's no secret. So I think I'm very afraid of the issue of the law, because honestly, I say laws for us have served for exploitation, for disappropriation, misappropriation, and to open the door to people that are separate, who have interests that are absolutely different from what we collectively think should happen with the coca leaf. So I think with or without law, while communities don't define a pathway, there will not be a solution to this, because there will always be loose ends and just people hovering. So I think it's important to bear those scenarios in mind, the ones that have already happened, and to have the coca then to end up in hands of big pharma, and we simply selling the leaves, the raw material, as Colombia has always done in Latin American policies. When we have the capacities, the knowledge for the transformation to be inserted in trade, I think it's an issue of identity, a problem of appropriation, reappropriation of the resources, in this case, of the coca leaf. Thank you, Fabiola. Go ahead, Dora. Here's where Fabiola, you have been at odds for many years, and then very cordially. But I believe that we're in a social rule of law, and it's regulated by laws. We cannot just go over them, which is, we're accustomed to doing that as a country. But I do believe it's important for regulation surrounding, or the ones that will modify or regulate prohibition, are always an advance to be able to reach agreements as a unity. We cannot think of some needs, some basic needs of the rural population groups are pretty much the same, regardless of their ethnicity. So we need, for the people who are linked to the coca production, to have the opportunity to be regulated, that will allow them to be on their land. And I harp a lot on the issue of the land, because it's not, very difficult not to have land. It's even in the tropics where we have food everywhere. But if you do not have land, it's very difficult for you to have your family prosper. And we have been built from this mestizo, this union. So I think that the big challenge in the laws that are proposed, regulation in general, the biggest challenge is, how do we do to have a strengthened state with the possibility of making the laws to enforce the laws. I I agree with Fabiola when we make a problem of regulation in cannabis was the justification to um, for the in Jambalo and Cauca and Bibiu, the production became extended on the street for cannabis on the streets, and this really created some conflicts. But then, in addition to the cannabis, medicinal cannabis is the discussion that is being postponed, and we need people to pay attention to this. We need to regulate recreational adult use of cannabis. Why? But because we are in a social rule of law, the laws regulate us. We're all Colombian citizens. That's why our ID document says we need to strengthen them. I think it's important to create norms in on a desk in Bogota is very difficult. When we tell people in Bogota, when we sit with the Ministry of Justice or Ministry of the Interior, with officers in Bogota, with activists in Bogota, good people and mediocre people, bad people, how we cannot understand how they pretend to regulate uh, coca crop without knowing what coca is. We cannot allow people to exercise power actions in regarding what is urban against rural, determining how the other needs to live without knowing what the other person needs. So we have laws that do not know the reality of the rural life, their needs. Sometimes I don't even know if to cry or laugh when people say, oh, we need some enterprises. So we need the Ministry of Foreign Commerce and gives us how to register your product and how do you package it and sell it. And INVIMA comes with norms of good practices of product manipulation. They have no idea of what they're asking for us to do. We cannot comply with it because we have no power, no energy. And so, uh, and if a product needs to be vacuumed, they need energy, electric energy. We don't have, so we need to. They want us to have the closed suction regarding the teas or the herbal teas. It has to be a closed system so that it will give us a code from the INVIMA, which is the authority. No, we cannot, Mr. Zinvima. It's computerized. We have no way of taking something from Bogota to this area because it broke down when the power went off. So at some point, Fabiola, a long time ago, scolded me. She says, "You're a government oriented person." I said, "No, not so much that I'm government oriented, but I like laws. I like laws to be clear. One law that's built without knowing what the needs are, in this case, the coca leaf, in order to be able to escalate production, regardless of the ethnicity it belongs to, because why do we have this big problem with medicinal cannabis? Because people were sold the idea that I'm going to produce cannabis for the pharma, and politicians uh, got their votes, and uh, so we have a lot of politicians work talking about making campaigns on cannabis. What was the problem? We didn't have the knowledge or technology to produce cannabis with a standard that the pharma required. People weren't told that. So when the law is made, and I agree with Fabiola, to benefit just a few, when it's not honest, when the formulation of the law is not, then we can look at the benefits of people in the Senate organizing their own things, then you do not know the needs. So I think that there are two challenges. We need to bear in mind the productive actors or stakeholders. It's not just because the rural person doesn't know how to speak in technical terms doesn't mean his knowledge is less important than the technical person in the industry. If we don't listen to the people, if we don't identify really how what the problems, the productive chain from one link to another, we cannot come up with laws that have to do with the reality of the production. So the challenge here is to have a state that really enforces law. We cannot continue thinking that we that fold our arms and people they're saying they're planting more coca, and people who should have control on the areas, the representative of the state in the territories are the mayor, the council member, police, and they're all just standing there. Oh, so since they're going to free that, then nobody does anything. So let's all be responsible as citizens. Let's be specific with our rights and obligations and duties. So the right is to respect the laws, to enforce the laws, and there if there may and the right is to make. Once I start talking about politicians, I start getting mad because we need to regulate a participative way, calling all the stakeholders. Maybe we won't be doing it these 4 years, but if we start, we can leave some bases so that things can happen. And I believe that the example that both of you have brought uh, to learn the lessons that cannabis has left, because there were mistakes. Hopefully, they can be compensated with the different senators. The thing, pardon me, but it's not only with cannabis. And look at what the Afros, who did they benefit? There was a smart aleck and with Vice, this drink, and this only one person, but they have all, but it has now become um, a heritage for all. It's being regulated, and they were able to bring that down. Who is the owner? Who's the owner of that business? The Gastronomic Congress is bringing 15 or 20 people who are producing it in the Pacific area with Vice. And the people stood up and reacted. Right now, they will probably take it from there because big foreigners were behind these one or two people. So up to what point is this honest? So if the law were developed, for example, in the cannabis, which it had peasants had to be included, well, yeah, that's a benefit. But no, they changed it later, and everything was fixed so that, among others, Parmacielo would have the opportunity to say how they made it, and only a few people benefited. If the norms worked, I agree with Dora. Well, but if it's not like that, then why should we have them? I will interrupt because I think we can talk. I knew that, but since the moment we talked on the phone, I know that this conversation would extend. But it's 8:30 in New York, 7:30, almost 7:30 there, and we want to honor the time. And maybe there are some questions. Maybe we can address some of a few questions we have. Let's see. Somebody is asking why the title of decocainize cocaine when this is the alkaloid that is most important in the plant. Why say that coca is not cocaine when it's absolute falsity? Should it not be that we should leave aside our prejudices and assume that cocaine consumed in low quantities, which is to chew on it, is healthier than bad? So let's take the title. It's the word that is the way people relate to the plant is through cocaine. So when we select that word, not to take away the cocaine from the plant, but the image and the narratives that have surrounded in the northern countries. And how do we start taking those narratives away from the plant so that we can make visible the not indigenous knowledges, ancestral knowledges, to make the plant be seen, the relationship people have with the plant? That's the importance of the title. How? Starting from this visual narrative that I found, which is in the books, how this narrative is presented, and we start making visible all of this knowledge and everything that's happening in Colombia that has happened in countries in the south and which is unknown in the countries of the north. So the title, I put it from the vision of the countries of the north, not from the perspective of the countries of the south. That would be my answer. Marcela, Fabiola, Dora can answer more regarding the other questions. Or if you would like to compliment mine, or if I was mistaken. But from where I come from, that's the title that I selected for my work. It was from that point, and also for Coca-Cola, the decocainize the plant. And that's how Coca-Cola can be the pharmaceutical or that sells Coca-Cola is the only one that can buy the leaves legally. And this conversation has shown the trajectory of Dora and Fabiola and the people who they work with. It's an enormous work of showing that coca is more than cocaine. And the narrative of the war on drugs is that. I don't know if somebody would like to say. Yeah, I agree with Marcella and with Tatiana. We need to change the narrative that the words that we use regarding the resources also uh, give us sympathy or antipathy or a bad feeling. So this issue is important of reconstructing the narratives to look at them with different lenses, but also it's the lens of the other, not hovering or just thinking each other. That is why I made the invitation to this conversation to look at it from the north. This exercise of telling people from the northern hemisphere, or what we call the countries of the north, because it's from the people in the south. This is a resource that is ours. I completely agree with Fabiola with that. That another thing that we need is to build our own narratives, not what the other tells us that we should see. The success of prohibition of 61 of the convention of narcotics is they convinced us that we were doing badly, and it became such a part of our thought that coca was bad and that horrible publishing advertising that coca was the plant that kills. And David and their team were able to get that off the air. And we need that type of actions that generate at our own knowledge what we want to show the world, to generate our own narratives with our loves and our errors and our own narratives. The translator left or was cut off. I think she was frozen. So We are, oh, she's here. Yes. So it froze. So I don't know what is not translated. So I hadn't noticed. I think there's another question here on. I think it's a question that we have been speaking about it, but maybe it's good to go back to it from Carlos Flores. How can we normalize the use of coca leaf in a country like Colombia? Pardon me. I think that the translator, something happened. Claudia, Claudia. If I go to English, I will then go into English and I will try to translate. Yes, go ahead. Just a moment. Please pardon us. So, this question, I think we have been answering this little by little. To the initiatives, to see them, you can go to www.retococa.gov. You have providers. There's the initiative. There's Coca NASA. There's a telephone number of Juan Fabiola's son and her brother, which has a very nice initiative for coca production. And it's all the people who right now we know, or at least we have known, that work especially who have reliable deliveries so that people can have access. Oh, here is Claudia back. Okay, so the question says, Carlos, how can we normalize the use of coca in Colombia? I don't know if Fabiola, would you like to address that? The use of the coca leaf was always normal until they started to make it, to demonize it. Has been one of our activities for us to tell we, the victims, to tell the story, that for nobody to come and talk in our name, because that has been a disaster. For people to come and have an opinion on our thoughts and our culture, when it is we who are saying, with respect the coca leaf. The coca leaf should be seen as a total. So all of these debates have been open today throughout the country, across the country. And we have been having bills to talk about coca. Before, it used to be taboo, a sin, a problem. And well, the doors were shut in our faces, and we have been very clear, because there has been a passion for identity, for recovery of what belongs to us. So I think that Colombia still is needing that, because we are still in an attitude of obeying what the foreigner says. There's a song that I like a lot, and it says, why don't you leave? If you don't want to be here, why don't you leave? If you're tired of this culture, well, go to where you feel funny, but leave us here with what we have, with what we are. And that's what the land provides. And if there's coca, we will be eating coca. We will make coca flour, and we'll send it, because today people are cultivating just coca. And we can prepare a lot of nourishment and food for the world. And I think we're not making the most of that opportunity. And abroad, it would be very important. But here in Colombia, they say, I'm just tired for people to tell me, go to your territory. I don't know if you have heard that song of the Tigers of the North that says, I'm tired of you telling me that I'm not part of this territory. But no, here in Colombia, we're working people. driven people, were peaceful. Indians who eat coca, Indians with proposals for coca, because that's what we are. And it's a problem of a recovery of the identity, of the adoption, appropriation of what belongs to us. And we're not talking about these misters that come from abroad. It's more important to look at our surroundings, what we are, what we have, and there we can be successful. And I believe that that's what we should do. The thing is, the politicians don't seem to be conscious or aware. They're always thinking of to try to hinder and not let communities to express themselves. Just 1 minute. I believe that the legal regulations, we could modify Article 3rd of Law 30 that gives the narcotics fund to the possibility of regulating the use, the medical and scientific uses. I think if we add their medical, scientific, and industrial, we would be saving, we would make the most of this journey, and we would be able to affect the norms and have a pathway towards processing of the coca in Colombia. Go ahead, Fabiola. And today, it could be a decree that says the responsibilities of the indigenous peoples. And I think that would be for all of us. The thing is, you're mixing there the mestizo. No, we're not going to exclude them. No, don't think of that. There should be a decree that talks about the Indians, that they won't be excluded. There's all of us, Black people, Indians, because each of the societies have their strengths. They can be part of strong part of research of the different plants and coca. And not to be specific there, we're in agreement, Fabiola, because it depends on you and me. We would be in agreement. We're in agreement for many years. Yes, that's the pathway for us, but nobody says anything. And today they're approving a law that is not going to be good for anything. We just need a decree. No, it wasn't approved. It was left for tomorrow. Yeah, and they'll just keep procrastinating. Okay, so we're still without Claudia's interpretation. I will send her a message. Claudia, did you connect with the same email? Yes, the same one. But can you change channel because you're in the Spanish? I don't have a channel. I'm in the everybody channel. So I don't know, Tatiana, would you like for us to have another question without interpretation, or shall we close? There was a question for Fabiola, which is in Spanish. I will change and explain in English what is happening. Try, but I don't think you can. No, I can't, because if you can't be an interpreter, if you don't have the channels, you cannot. Okay. So, sorry, what? Okay, so I will make the question. You are muted now. We cannot hear you. Okay. For Fabiola, what do you think of the works of Colombian artists regarding coca leaf? Is that good? Does that work for the narrative and positive issues for art in different countries? I think it's very important. Artists always have expressed a need, a collective need, individual as well. And I think that here there's a responsibility of all to tell. And I think that it's not a bad idea. It's a contribution. I value singers who talk about coca. marijuana. Painters, artists who express themselves. In general, all artists, I respect them because they're the only ones, maybe with the pain in their heart, they express themselves in a way that is very subtle and delicate. Maybe that's why the common folk don't have the time to see them. But in general, if one sees the historic footprint or print, the artists have always been in the right to express themselves, to express love, to express peace, happiness, joy. I don't have anything against them. Quite the contrary, I think it's a very important contribution on their part in this cause. I don't know if you wish to say something, Dora. No, I love art, and I think art surpasses the great advantage is it goes beyond languages. So the languages, in terms of language, they have the go beyond the mere language for their communication. Their work can be read and can be seen and interpreted very easily. That is why lately we are insisting on pedagogy or education in having different tools and different readings so that we can reach knowledge. So I think art is the closest that we have to sublimation of knowledge. It's also a way of bringing out all the concepts to make them easy to follow and see. That's why I congratulate Tatiana and Marcela for having this moment a reality in a country and creativity because but let's see what you saw, what you did, Tatiana, in just a few sheets, and what a wonderful installation. I think artists do what others would like to see, and we can't. We don't have that skill, creative skill. So thank you for doing that, and thank you for doing what we can't do, and we can all enjoy your creativity and ingeniousness to bring about these works. Thank you. Thank you for that. I will see if I can say goodbye in the two languages. ¿Hay manera de entrar a los dos idiomas? Well, where is it? I'm how embarrassing. Tell everybody to have the original language. For all of you, por favor pidan que tengan el idioma original. Yes, you can go ahead. This has been wonderful. I would love for this to be extended and more. These are the things that I think are wonderful, and they have been happening to me as I encounter the plant, is to create these bridges so that I can know more about this. And I think that when I encounter people who do not have the knowledge, this process opens for me a venue for questions to come to me. And it's a constant learning, constantly learning, receiving. I love that I was able to share this space. I will say this in English now. Silence. They started putting the interpretation again. So Claudia's back. So interpretation is back again. So so you can talk. I talk. I began again. So I would like to show you what a friend gave me. Look at what I have here. I cannot hear. You cannot hear me? Okay, can you hear me now? No. Oh, now. We cannot. Yeah, we cannot hear you. You are now as an interpreter. That's why.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Okay, we're back. Okay, Fabiola, look at what I have here. Hey, Coca, our friend Claudia Gonzalez brought me this on Saturday, the day of the opening. Brought me this. She had brought it from the airport. I haven't opened it. I haven't tasted it. I will open it next week with my group of artists, and I will share it within one of these halls that we have been sharing our work, exchanging our work, and different knowledges, ideas that each brings from their own experience, cultural experience, and from where each comes. There's always something present, and hopefully I will be able to meet you soon and be able to have more of these conversations and continue learning and to continue exploring. I will send pictures for the people who are in New York. This will continue open until Sunday the 25th. We will be, all the artists will be talking about the projects. So, all of those who can come, I really recommend it because it's a lovely exhibit. The interaction and the process with each of the different artists was amazing. And well, you will see the work that Dora was mentioning, where I have some shoots of 20 coca leaves that I brought, 7 from Peru in 2008, the other 13 from Colombia that my friend Godino gave to me, and I've treasured. I still have them. And in fact, I've done 100 and, 1,500 talk stroking. That is what she had done, stroking of the leaf. And that's what I do to think. And it's a way of meditation. And it's like a way of finding my relationship with the plant and of learning around about the plant. That's how I'm learning. And hopefully, at some point, people who are here can have that learning and can have access to be able to have a different relationship with it, like I have. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Dora, Fabiola, Tatiana, for being in this space. Thank you for the people in the residency. It has been really, really important, very special. We will be seeing you. Yungao. Yungao. We'll see you. Thank you.